pressure down there is so heavy and strong, they were instantly it imploded. They found the first piece about 1,600 feet from the bow of the Titanic, which is quite a distance. But we do know that they were descending and still had contact with the mothership at 1 hour and 45 minutes, okay? It's supposed to take them 2 hours to get down there. So they were almost down to the bottom, still having contact and alive before everything went completely silent. One of the professionals stood up there and said that they found 5 major parts of debris down there.
We continue to map the debris field, and as the Admiral said, we will do the best we can to fully map out what's down there.
Something that I found a little aggravating is the reporters, they kept asking, like yelling and asking, are you going to try to recover the bodies? But I do feel like if they were reporting on this, they should probably know that far down, there is no recovery of the bodies. There's no bodies left. And you guys, this is, not confirmed at all, but there was a Navy retired submariner who said that he heard allegedly when the 5 were descending, they were speaking to the mothership and saying that they were descending too fast. At this time, they're at 1 hour and 45 minutes. They're trying to release some sandbags so they would slow down, and it wasn't working. And then everything went silent. And it makes me wonder, did something break off? And then did they possibly not be able to release the sandbags because something wasn't working, and then they hit the bottom? And I know sometimes we would think that if they're in the water and they hit the bottom, it doesn't hit hard, but it does still hit hard.
If you free fall, okay, so let's say they were 2,000 meters down or 2,500 meters, you're going to almost 4,000. So there's another 1,500 meters of free fall. When you impact the seabed, it's like running into a light pole. But you've got to remember, while they're sitting on the bottom, they've still got all of that sea pressure pressing on the hull. And if there's a weak point, at some point, that weak point is going to give. And then you would have an implosion.
The only silver lining from an outsider would be that they didn't suffer. But I just can't imagine like what happened in those moments before. Like, did water start coming in and a panic happened? Did they hit the bottom and bounce off of it, and then the hull was compromised? It's sad to think about. But I also know that a lot of us, and I'm sure including the family, was holding out hope for a miracle.
On behalf of the United States Coast Guard and the entire Unified Command, I offer my deepest condolences to the families.
I can just see how difficult it's going to be to come up with any real answers unless the people at the mothership spoke to them and heard things. But if they did, why didn't they get a hold of the Coast Guard so much quicker? Why did they wait till 5:30 to see if they were going to pop back up? Why did they wait until 9 p.m.? I don't know. Maybe because it's a private company and they have protocols within the company. However, this whole 96 hour of oxygen, it's never been tested with this ship before. And speaking of that, you guys, a few years ago, a whistleblower came out against OceanGate, and it was an employee that said that they were blowing the whistle, that there were severely unsafe things that they were doing or unsafe environments. Multiple people have come out and said that every single time this Titan goes down, it loses connection or communication with the mothership above. Every single time it does.
On every dive we took, they lost communication.
But that's typical. They take these millionaires out there for 5 days at a time, so they have 5 chances to see the Titanic. Most weeks they make it only once, or this summer, not at all.
But that could be why, and you guys, when I heard this, I'm like, I need somebody to explain this to me. So this submersible, it left the ship at like 5 a.m., okay? And it's descending down the 2.5 miles to get down to the Titanic. It gets down to 1 hour and 45 minutes when it loses communication with the mothership between 7 and 8 a.m. Okay. And at 5:30 is when the submersible was supposed to pop back up to the top of the water and be floating. They wait until after 9 p.m. That's when they called the Coast Guard. So it lost communication around 8 a.m. or before, and the Coast Guard does not get notified until 9 p.m. That's all them hours. Who knows what could have happened? I don't know the protocol of calling the Coast Guard. I know that I sure wouldn't want to call them and get them involved if it was unnecessary, because again, they have to travel so far to get out there. Then you get out there and then they pop up and you're like, well, never mind. It was just, a fluke. But you're talking about from 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. That seems like a long time to wait to call. And as a matter of fact, I guess last summer, the trip that it took, it lost communication for about 3 hours with the mothership. And that's terrifying. They were asked during the press conference about food, and he kind of beat it around the bush, but he said that there was, from what they understand, a bit of food rations. I wouldn't be concerned with food rations. I mean, you can go a long time without eating and survive. The general rule is a person can typically go 3 days without water. And it's seemingly, from my research, every time this Titan goes out, there's issues. And the person that is the sub operator is controlling it with a remote control that you would use to play PlayStation with. Like literally. Second thing is that hatch that they crawl in and out of, it is bolted 17 different bolts from the outside. So this submersible, the Titan, actually has like a certain device built into it that if they ever lose contact, they can release the weights that helps bring them down to the bottom of the ocean, and it will pop back up and float to the top, and then it'll just be floating there. And according to the professionals that I've listened to in the Britain media, that this has never really been done before. You're talking about having to find a cord or cords long enough that can go all the way down over 13,000 feet to the bottom of the ocean here. And then to find something that can latch around this sub and pull it up, all in this time frame of the amount of oxygen. Another theory of what could have happened to them is if when they were going down, they may have lost contact of their GPS and they may have tried to land on the ship. And a lot of people used to do that in the past. They used to come down and they would land their different items, whether it be their robotic cameras down there or even different expedition trips. They would land it on the ship, but they quit doing that because the ship is so old and rusty that things can break off and then they can fall down into the ship. And I wonder if that happened because this Titan actually has a device built into it that will send out certain frequencies so different ships can hear them. In the military, they've been dropping things in the water trying to hear these frequencies and they're not hearing anything. And it makes me wonder if they have dropped down into the ship and the metal surroundings of the ship is stopping the frequencies. They're saying that the pressure that is that far in the ocean is 6,000 psi. They're saying it only takes 75 to like 115,000 to kill a human being. Okay, 6,000 psi, which means if there was any kind of leak, any kind of anything, I mean, it would literally implode and everything would just because the pressure is so heavy down there. I wanted to add that while I was researching this, I saw quite a few professionals talking about how dangerous this is. There was even a couple of them that said that it is far more safe to go to outer space than it is to go to the depths of the ocean. And one man even talked about working in the oil field for 16 years and how the moment that the oil industry was able to use like computers and robots and stuff like that to replace humans actually having to go down into these great depths, they replace them because it is just so dangerous.
The oil industry, as soon as there was an alternative to people going in the water, that's what we moved to, because as soon as you get people in water, it's huge risk. And the companies that provide that need to think about backup systems.
I also heard an interview that was so moving and so touching with a guy that went down to see the Titanic. He's a scientist back in 2000, so 23 years ago. And when he went down there, he went down on a little submersible that was only for 3 people, but it actually had more room than this Titan did. This Titan, they're they're cramped in there together. And he said that when he got down there, they were looking around and then their submersible started to speed up because there was an underwater current and it sucked up their submersible and jammed it into one of the huge propellers of the Titanic. And they were stuck there for about 3 hours and he thought that he was going to die. Now, he did say that they had communication the whole time with the mothership above. They never lost communication, but they were stuck. And what were they going to do? He was like, there's no AAA that can come down, come and pull you out when you're stuck in between a propeller. But when I heard about that, that's when I was speaking to my husband about the underwater currents that we don't think about. I live in Florida. I know about the rip currents that you can't even see. You can be playing on the beach and playing in the edge of the water or, just about this deep. And the next thing you know, you're getting moved away. And people drowned all the time because you cannot see these rip currents. And this is in shallower water. And what if they were going down there and they got swept up in a current? They could have been pushed thousands of feet away. And if they lost power, obviously they had to have, because there's no communication at all, not even a ding, which is sending out a signal to where they're at, no communications, no text messages, no nothing. Then they are in the pitch black dark, in the freezing cold. It crammed in a little area, struggling to breathe. And that's horrifying. Not even a bit of light, just black nothingness and quietness. Maybe you hear some rumblings from the sea every now and then. And maybe they even hear one of the robots going by that doesn't see them, but they can't do anything. Like, horrifying. I mean, you got to be a certain type of person, again, to pay $250,000 to go down and see the Titanic, which, no disrespect at all. And I don't mean to say this to be funny, but let's be real here. You can see on 4K on YouTube for free. You know what I mean? Like, you can see it real good versus trying to fight to look through a little porthole. I've seen plenty of interviews about every person on there. I'm sending all of my thoughts and prayers and love out to the family members. It's still unimaginable to me to think about going down that far in the water. 13,000 feet below sea level. And to think about being trapped in there with my child and not being able to help them. Horrifying. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see y'all in the next video. Bye.